I want to talk about an article. There's a lot of articles out there right now about the Democratic Party, and we saw the one a couple weeks ago. The Democratic Party should move to the center. They're all they're written by different people, but it seems like they all have one brain, and they can kind of get in a room and are just pushing this neoliberal crap. But this article hurt me the most. I know Emma hasn't read it yet, but I read it, and I think it is just so emblematic of, really, we are up against serious opposition, whether it's from the Democratic establishment politically or the pundits and the New York Times. So this is from the New York Times. Headline, "It's the economy, Democrats, but inequality is not an issue." Let me read that one more time. "It's the economy, Democrats, but inequality is not the issue." Okay. So, economic inequality, America, one of the most unequal countries in the world, even though we're the richest country, according to the New York Times, the paper of record, not an issue. I'll read you a little bit of it. "Is income inequality the defining challenge of our time? Bernie Sanders thinks so. He ran for president as inequality's most ardent foe. So does Elizabeth Warren, the other champion of the Democratic Party's left. Even President Barack Obama, in his understated way, seemed to agree. Notably, he engineered perhaps the most aggressive redistribution of income since President Lyndon B. Johnson in the 1960s. I don't know what the hell that guy's talking about.
Look at the chart. It only has increased since Obama's presidency.
I don't know how Obama did anything on income inequality. But maybe the issue should not be the party's lodestar. This month, a clutch of Democratic governors, members of Congress, and city mayors gathered with Democratic fundraisers, strategists, and other champions of liberal causes in this secluded patrician resort in the Rockies to hear that all this attention to income inequality could actually hurt them." So before I even go further, what they're talking about is basically the circle jerk of all circle jerks of the establishment. The mayors, the governors, the donors, the strategists, the consultants, the pollsters. They all gathered in Colorado, it seems.
In Aspen.
Yes, in Aspen.
Income inequality is not... I've been to Aspen. They don't know what income inequality is there.
Right. So basically, you have all the people that were so god-awfully wrong for the last, I would say, decade. But if you want to focus on 2016, these are all the brainiacs who pushed Hillary Clinton and said Bernie's radical and, just Trump, bad, Trump bad, we'll win. And now these are the people unifying in the Rockies with their caviar and Chardonnay to talk about the future of the Democratic Party. So right there, is a problem. But it gets worse. Quote, "Income inequality is severe. John Cowan, president of the centrist Democratic research group Third Way, told the assembled politicos." The quote continues, and part of the economic system is unfair. But these are not the central problems vexing most Americans." Oh, you know what the central problem is, Johnny boy? "Many of the solutions proposed to meet them are not responsive to the aspirations, needs, and values of those Americans." What do you think? Is income inequality not the central problem? Apparently.
What are the aspirations, needs, and values? It's so vague on purpose. It's an offensive article. David Sirota, our colleague, had a great tweet about it, essentially just saying, can the New York Times... Is this in the op-ed? Is this an opinion piece?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, thank God.
The New York Times is pushing it.
But I know they try to give diversity to the people in their editorial board, but if you want diversity, why wouldn't you have a surrogate or a champion of someone who was the most popular most popular politician in the country, former presidential candidate? They only seem to have conservative economists on their editorial board or corporate Democrats. That's it. And I think that they're doing their paper a disservice by not putting on some sort of populist writer. But I understand that that's not popular in the cocktail crowd, but maybe they want to expand their readership to people that aren't pretentious New York wine sippers. And I love wine, but I gotta be real with you. I know these crowds. I know these people, and they just think, manufacturing, it's all out the window. These trade deals are awesome. Yeah, rah, rah, rah. And that's the exact kind of crowd that's in the New York Times. Again, someone like Michelle Alexander, a renowned columnist and professor, was pro-Bernie, wrote The New Jim Crow. Why doesn't someone like her, why wouldn't they put her on their editorial board. It's just such a circle jerk.
And Love Cat says, I aspire to feed my family and pay my mortgage. Yes, Love Cat, but you have probably had a hard time doing that since the deck is stacked against you and all the money funnels to the oligarchy that's meeting in Colorado to circle jerk each other. You see how that works? Now, and if you like my, what was that, a metaphor or an alliteration? I don't even know. Hashtag reality rescued for more of this dynamic duo. Let me read you the rest because it's so devoid of any self-awareness. The focus on inequality misses the mark on more than substance, he argued. In a country where only a quarter of voters identify as liberals and 2/3 believe that, quote, big government is the main threat to the nation's future, and where over the last decade the Democratic Party has hemorrhaged governorships, seats in Congress, and half of its seats in state legislatures, focusing on income redistribution could amount to political suicide. Instead, he argues, Democrats should aim at what he defined as the scarcity of opportunity of afflicting so many Americans. Quote, the great moral cause of our time. Holy Jesus Christ, Mother of Moses. This guy is such a fucking idiot, I can't even handle it. How do I even break this down? Because I could break this down word by word, but I'll go each sentence. Okay. The focus on inequality misses the mark on more than substance, he argued. All right, can't break that down. In a country where only a quarter of voters identify as liberals, half the country doesn't vote, you fucking idiot. So this is cherry picked. We're going to be demonetized because I keep fucking and fucking. Oh well. In a country where only a quarter of voters identify as liberals, half the country isn't even registered, and 2/3 believe that big government is the main threat to the nation's future. I don't even know where you're getting that from.
Look at any poll issue by issue. Look
Right.
at income inequality polls. There are polls about it. Do people think it's a problem?
Right. And where over the last decade, the Democratic Party has hemorrhaged governorships, seats in Congress, and half of its seats in state legislatures. Have the Democrats that have lost on the governor's level, on the mayor's level, in the legislatures been running on income inequality? I don't remember that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. There are only, I would say, maybe 5 Democrats that I could think of nationally that ran on income inequality.
You know the last
And they're
Democrat?
pretty successful.
You know the last Democrat that I remember running on income inequality, other than Bernie, and won re-election? Barack Obama. I think it wasn't really I don't think he had a lot of backbone to back it up, but he had very, very populist tones during his 2012 re-election. You remember that speech he gave?
Yeah, and it was the same narrative in 2008. He's too left. He can't win. Hillary, go for her. And, Obama ended up not being as left by any means as how he campaigned, but a leftist campaign does really well. Because the left and right paradigm in this country, as purported by columnists like this, is an outdated view of the country, and that goes to show because they don't leave their bubble. They just don't. And you don't even need to physically leave. I'm saying that, honestly. But look at papers outside of your establishment press and look at thinkers that think a little bit differently than you. I'll even read the Daily Caller from time to time. I don't agree with them on much, but these people, I've heard from, I have family members that work in the establishment press, that I need to diversify my opinions.
Whoa. You got family members in the establishment press?
One.
Why didn't you tell me that before I hired you?
I have told you, but I don't want to bring it up on air.
Okay.
In case she gets in. But I have a family member.
That's Emma's look when she's flustered. Go on.
I have a family member that works for, one of the big 3 papers, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and I won't say which one. But I do. And she always says that I need to diversify my portfolio of media, that I only consume liberal media, she thinks, right? And that I need to just look at other mediums. Yeah, I do. I actually do look at conservative stuff all the time online. That's what we do as people that are a part of the new media. But the establishment press is not aware that their left and right paradigm of what they read is a bubble in itself, because those are opinions of elitists in both of those sectors of political thought, and their opinion is extremely narrow and not reflective of an overwhelming majority of the country.
Right. And somebody, hold on, I'm trying to read some comments here. Somebody just said, Gilbasso said, I'm a proud centrist Democrat. Does that make me a bad person? No, Gilbasso, I'm sure I'd love to get, what was that stuff we had last night, Ty? That good feta cheese and all that? I'm sure I'd like to break,
That's good for your
I'm sure I'd love to break bread with you. But politically speaking, you're not a bad person. I just think you need to open your mind a little bit, because we've had centrist policies now. Actually, we've had kind of center to right policies pretty much since the 1980s. It depends on the president. It was more to the right with Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, more center right with Bill Clinton, and more, I would say, with Obama, just in the middle to Republican. With Obamacare, we know that was a Republican point. But the point is, I think the problem with the New York Times, and yes, it's somebody's opinion piece in the New York Times, but you rarely see like opinion pieces in the New York Times that would be the headline, "Income inequality is the crisis of our time." It's always from this centrist to center-right point of view. And let me tell you something, if this columnist who wrote this piece would actually gone out to where we went on that Disappearing Middle Class tour,
right.
If you're not familiar, Emma and I went out, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin in like 5 days. And we basically put a face to what Bernie was talking about, the disappearing middle class. There's a playlist on this channel for it if you want to check out the videos. If they would go out and ask those folks what their problem is, trust me, they're not the scarcity of opportunity afflicting so many Americans. No, their problem is there are no opportunities. And part of the reason, real opportunity we're talking, part of that reason is because the deck has been stacked. The money has funneled. It's not only that the money has funneled up to the top 1%. Productivity has never been so high in this country.
Yep.
But as productivity, meaning these people, the scarcity of opportunity, as people's productivity has risen, the wages have stagnated. It's not by accident. It's what the government, in concert with the corporations and Wall Street and the lobbyists, and I think the media, have done to people. So these people are very disconnected from what real people are going through, and that's part of why Trump was able to win.
Boom.
I'll read you one last part of it. They say that Mr. Cohen, who wrote it, exhortation might be understood as a typical call for repositioning that follows a lost presidential election. Third Way, which organized the gathering, is after all an intellectual heir to President Bill Clinton's centrist politics, more skeptical of deregulation than in the Clinton era and less interested in fiscal balance, but equally at loggerheads with the Democratic Party's left. And yet the Democratic infighting over message and strategy in the wake of November's stunning defeat suggests that something existential is going on. Only 8 years after they boldly proclaimed the economic crisis to be a critical opportunity, Democrats lost touch with their voters. See, this is also a misnomer. Democrats didn't lose touch with their voters. Voters have been woke. I think when you have an anti-establishment year, whether it's Trump and his phony baloney talk or Bernie Sanders actually telling the truth, voters, it's not that Democrats lost touch with their voters. Voters have realized that the Democrats and frankly the Republicans, there's significant differences, I think, on things like race and social issues, but economically speaking, one is like very in your face and open that they're just trickle down and for the rich, and Democrats, people are getting more awoken to that. They'll tell you one thing, but who they take money from and then how their votes balance. People were more woke this time around, and I think they are continuing to get more, I hate that term, woke.
But I mean, I think that's a little, I agree with you. I think that's very applicable to the Bernie Sanders movement. I think it's not applicable to Trump. I
agree. I think my point is with the Trump voters, I mean, more with the Trump voters, it's less woke and more just like they wanted something different.
They wanted to throw a brick through the window.
They wanted something different because they are starting to realize that they are just been getting the same old, same old. Like
right.
When Hillary Clinton is going around talking about like stronger together and this and that, like the people in Michigan and Ohio, they knew like the Clintons were the ones that were instrumental in their jobs going offshore.
That's absolutely correct.
Right. So we'll keep, unfortunately, having to talk about these pieces because they are being written, and whether it's written or segments on TV, they are in influential outlets that a lot of people read, and we need to debunk the bullshit. The bottom line is, if you look at individual polls, like she said, all these issues are connected to income inequality. And if I'll go around the country right now, and the first question I ask is, how do you feel about, McDonald's making billions in profits while you're struggling to either, choose between paying for medicine or groceries for your kids? That is their main issue, in addition to scarcity of jobs. So to write a headline like income inequality isn't an issue, yeah, you probably have a lot of income, whoever wrote that. That's what it comes down to.
Yep.